welcome to part one, why integrate with Halo PSA and N Central. We're going to kick off and do some introductions, couple commercials to start. I'm going to do a quick poll and then we're going to go right into the content and show you why and demonstrate why this integration is pretty amazing. Okay, so first and foremost, I have to do a legal disclaimer. This content may contain forward-looking statements regarding future product plans and development efforts. I'm not the GVP of our product team. I don't get to make product decisions of when things come out or when things get pushed. Just know that if I talk about something on a roadmap, just know that product plans and priorities do change. Okay, good. One thing I will tell you is on October 16th, we will be launching our first Enable Cyber Resilience Summit of 2025. This is the first time we've done this. If you haven't heard, Enable is doing a bit of a rebrand. Why? Because we are focusing on cybersecurity, and we're going to be a cybersecurity company. So this is the first foray into showing you why we are in this cybersecurity space. And again, session one will kick off at 9 a.m. AEDT, and session two will kick off probably for anyone in North America or Europe around 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or I believe that, and Morgan, keep me honest because you're over in the UK, I believe that is 2 p.m. Your time. And pull out your phone. Obviously, you see that QR code. Please register for that. We would love to have you. Myself and Lewis will be presenting something very cool around the convergence of IT and SecOps. Okay, or IT operations and SecOps. And of course, like every boot camp that I do, I always do an Empower plug because I love seeing you all at Empower. I love seeing Morgan at Empower. We always have a great time together. That's kicking off on April 13th to the 15th. There will not be a pre-day on this one. However, I will probably be there on the 14th. So, I should say the 12th, I'm sorry. So please come early if you would like. And it's going to be a pretty exciting, I will tell you, this will probably be our largest Empower ever and probably the most fun. Okay, so we're going to have education, we're going to have certifications, we're going to have speakers from all over the globe, industry best leaders, and of course, we're going to do some networking and do some cool stuff. For those who don't know me, my name is Jason Murphy. I'm one of 7 head nerds, technically 8 if you include Marc Andre, head nerds here at Enable. Worked here previously for about 5 years, left, went to live the MSP dream myself, came back, and I've been doing this head nerd thing. Just know here at Enable, I'm mostly focused around IT operations. I do dabble in security operations as well, as we all do, but I'm highly focused on things like PSA, IT service management, enterprise service management, and of course, N Central. All right, and I will be quiet because I know Morgan can probably introduce himself at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining today. I see a few familiar names in the chat. Hello again for those individuals. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the product manager over at Halo PSA. I've been with Halo for just over 5 years now, and for the majority of that time was part of our onboarding team. So I haven't lived the MSP dream. I've never run or worked in an MSP myself, but I've worked with hundreds of our customers over the years, configuring Halo and allowing our customers to maximize the value that they can get from the Halo platform. And I'd like to think that I do the same thing today, just on a slightly larger scale, by being involved in our roadmap direction and working directly with our customers, getting feedback from the platform and making improvements based on what you guys want to see. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do here is we're going to launch a quick poll, and provided that I built this correctly, where our tools, polls, here we are. Okay, so I'm going to launch this poll. And the poll question is, what part of this 4-part series are you most looking forward to? Is it going to be, I want to learn more about AI and MCP servers? Are you highly focused on the integration piece and getting some best practices around that? Do you want to learn more about billing integrations and any kind of billing automation? Or hey, you already have Halo. I would just kind of want to come around and see if I missed anything. Check out any new features that may have been around. Okay, so it looks like for today, 50
Yeah.
at least 59% of you here. I'm going to end the poll here in about 3 seconds. Pardon me. Going to end that poll, and I'll show you the results because part one is around integration and setup. So this is perfect. So 58% of you have chosen that. 8% have chosen the AI and MCP servers. That will be part four. We're going to do that one in December. I want to learn more about billing integrations and automation. That will be part three. And some of you are just curious to see what you've missed. Okay, cool. So we'll come back to the screen here. And what I'm going to do here is just put in my password really quick so I can log into my Central because I had to reboot just before coming in here. All right. Resources available. What I can tell you is you can head on over to the developer portal. That URL is incorrect. I apologize. It is no longer enable.com/automation cookbook. You want to head over to developer.n-able.com. That is where we house all of our API stuff. You can also find recipes for PowerShell, and obviously in Central we have things like amps. So that's where all of our automation kind of lives. And we're upwards around 900 of those scripts and automation policies today. Again, for any kind of partner learning or training, we house all of our webinars or boot camps or master classes on Enable Me. All you have to do is go into learning, click Enable You, and obviously you can look for something like Halo PSA. You can check out our blogs. You're not going to get all of that marketing crap. You're going to get nothing but blog content from me and my colleagues around industry best practices, using N-central effectively, patch management, etc. And again, if you want to check out Halo, if you want to understand more about this integration, feel free to contact your customer success manager, who will then put you in touch with a customer success engineer. They can help you walk through some of this. Okay. And one last plug, for any future webinar, please check out enable.com/events. All right, so let's get to it. We're already 10 minutes into it. So I get asked all the time, can you send me your slides, Jay? I just want these slides because I want to go through it, methodically like you did. I cannot send slides, so feel free to take any screenshots. I can't prevent you from doing that. Document writer or any AI note taking, just know that you may want to write some of this down. Obviously, access to Halo's knowledge base. Currently, as it is today, Halo maintains this integration. They've done all of the work, which is awesome. So please check out usehalo.com. You can see the link here where you can click into the N-central user guide for this integration. Now, all right, little kind of preamble as to why. Why do we integrate with any PSA, specifically Halo PSA? And that is to allow deeper workflow automation that allows you to reconcile devices, tickets, alerts, and billing between two systems. This is the best of both worlds. There, I got that out. And it's going to allow you to save time. And if you're an MSP owner, right, it's all about profitability, right? And that labor is a huge cost center to any MSP. So being able to save time and be more efficient. Automating your billing makes you more efficient and speeds up your cash flow. And obviously, as a technician, you want to reduce the noise as much as possible between fine-tuning notifications and tickets in N-central, and obviously allowing to workflow from Halo PSA. Now, what does this integration give you? Now, I put 3 highlights. It's not limited to these 3 things because I would probably put a small novel in here at this point, but I wanted you to kind of focus on the 3 major aspects, right? Obviously, ticketing is number 1, right? We're going to be able to take all of that alert information that comes from N-central and maneuver that over to Halo and create that ticket. And bidirectionally, Halo will update us, in several different things. Updating of the ticket, closing of the ticket, for example. Most importantly, if you are focused on things like asset information behind your devices, you might previously call them configuration items. In Halo, we call them assets. So we're going to be able to take those assets, and in fact, N-central is actually getting away from the name device as well, and we're moving into an asset culture as well. So, and if you're not familiar, we do have the assets view in N-central. So what we're going to be able to do is take that asset information from N-central and also maneuver that over to Halo. And just know, we're going to be able to allow Halo through N-central and through that integration to be able to launch remote control directly from the ticketing interface, which is pretty freaking amazing. So those are the three major pieces that I wanted to focus on with you because those are really huge differentiators. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to get started with Halo PSA. And while I feel like I am almost expert level at Halo PSA, we actually have the expert with us. I'm going to go through a couple slides just to kind of give you kind of some visuals, and I'm going to hand it right over to Morgan to kind of walk you through this through a kind of comprehensive demo. First and foremost, when you go into Halo, they have an area for integrations. There are tons of products and companies in there where you integrate, but number one, enable N-central. All right. So what you're going to do is turn on that integration. And then from there, you're going to be presented with an interface to be able to configure, right? And this is what Morgan is going to take you through. Okay. Now, I do have some slides of when I created this Halo integration myself. But effectively, what we're going to do is walk through some basic details. You know, you're going to set up the name, right? And then what we're going to do is make sure that we can handshake with N-central, right? So I need that username and password to be able to talk to it, right? And then from there, what we're going to do is now pass it over to Morgan, who can now demonstrate this particular workflow.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, you know, absolutely. It's just sort of echoing what you're saying there about why integrate N-central and Halo. If you have N-central and you have Halo and you haven't integrated them, that's just wild, really. You know, your PSA and your RMM are arguably the two most important tools in your stack, and you know, further to what Jason was mentioning, having your devices in Halo, as we won't see this today, but we'll see this on the next session, having your devices in Halo allows you to automate that billing. It allows you to report on all of that information, so you can have a look at your cost per endpoint, attributes like that. And of course, just provides a more seamless experience for your team and your customers. So today's session is all about looking at the setup of the integration itself. What can you expect from the integration out of the box? We'll go through all of the core steps, make sure that you have all of the tools at your disposal to make sure that you're maximizing the integration in its native state. And then we'll start having a look at some fun use cases of the integration and ways that we can extend it in following sessions. So I'm just going to share my screen. Jason, hopefully you can see this. I presume everyone else can as well.
I can.
Excellent. Cool. So yeah, Jason mentioned that there is an integration space in Halo. So again, a few familiar names in the chat. So forgive me, you probably know where to go. For those of you that haven't seen Halo, welcome. This is the homepage. This is the agent application. This is where your team will be logging into on a daily basis to resolve those tickets for your customers. Now, we see quite a few options here, and right at the end we have this configuration option. So the configuration panel in Halo is where you change all of the settings in the platform, and of course it is locked down to only be available to administrators within Halo. So you can't have anyone coming in here and messing with all of your settings. Now, in here, we go to our integrations, and this is a list of all of the Halo-built first-party integrations that are available today. It's not an exhaustive list of every integration that is available with Halo. There are third-party vendors who have built integrations into Halo, and towards the end of this session, I will pop a link into the chat where you can go to have a look at all of the first and third-party integrations that are available today. Now we see a lot of these are grayed out. If a module is grayed out, it means that you won't be able to use the functionality for it, and you can see simply hovering over these modules, you can enable or disable, and we have our N Central integration here already enabled. Now, the first page that you're presented with are just a couple of high-level options that relate to every N Central instance, every N Central tenant that you connect to Halo. So a worthwhile point there is, of course, the N Central integration in Halo is multi-tenanted. So if you do have multiple N Central servers, you can connect them all to Halo, that we will see in a moment. Before we do, I just want to highlight here, we have this asset matching field. Now, by default, and when we start actually going through the integration and having a look at the steps, it will become apparent that you can import devices from N Central into Halo, and of course, once that import has been established, we set our N Central IDs directly from within Halo. However, prior to the importing of any devices from N Central into Halo, we don't know what that N Central ID is. However, you may have some assets that you've already created in Halo, either via stock manipulation in Halo. You may have imported assets from CSV or some other place, and you might want to actually, when importing assets from N Central, match those to existing assets in Halo. Now, that matching mechanism will be achieved by the value in the field that you select here, which tends to be serial number, being the same as the serial number field that is coming in from N Central. And we'll have a look at how we can create those field mappings in just a moment. But yeah, the asset matching field here is used to match newly imported assets from N Central into Halo to existing assets in Halo based on a similarity for the value in the field that you select here. Now, below that, we have this asset matching value exclusions. And what this means is you can create exclusions in here. And what this means is if an asset is imported from N Central into Halo for the first time, and we find a match for the field that we have selected here, but the value of that field is not actually a meaningful value. For example, it might be none. We can add an asset matching value exclusion in here, and what that will mean is we will not match on that asset. So you've got a lot of agency over determining what information we want to match on for assets when they first come into Halo from N Central, and are there any edge cases where we will actually want to ignore that matching and create a new asset based on the value of those fields. So that's what that option does. And then there's just a checkbox below that marks the tickets as red when they are closed in Halo, which may come from the alert being resolved in N Central. And this just simply means that they won't appear in the list of open tickets even though they're closed. And so we can just mark those tickets as red. Lovely stuff. So let's get into it. Where you're going to want to go to actually set the integration up is the N Central accounts option. And I mentioned a moment ago, the N Central integration is multi-tenanted. And what I mean by that is we can create multiple of these records in here. Now, we've already got one that's pre-connected. Thank you, Jason. So yeah, let's go and take a look in here and start looking at those tabs. So we saw a screenshot a moment ago where we're actually entering our details in here. So we've got our URL and then our username and password, and we just want to make sure that that connection has been successful. We've got our handshake there. Lovely stuff. Now, generally speaking, with integrations in Halo PSA, you're going to want to go through the tabs sequentially. We have ordered these tabs in such a way that we are hoping that our customers go through each tab, configure the tab, and then move on to the next one. So, once you've connected it, don't jump straight to assets. You're going to want to make sure that you set your customers up first. Now, There are, of course, situations where the name of the customer in N Central does not directly map to the name of the customer in Halo. And this is a very common scenario, because you may have several platforms that Halo PSA is integrating with, and your Entra tenants, N Central, QuickBooks Online, any other platform, and a customer's name may vary slightly across all of these different platforms. And so what we're doing here by establishing our mappings is we are specifying that a particular N Central customer is going to map to a particular Halo customer. Now, you don't necessarily need to set these mappings up for every single customer. When first importing these, Halo will attempt to match on customer by an exact name match. However, if you do have discrepancies in names, however small those discrepancies may be, you're going to want to come in here and you're going to want to add your mappings in. So the first thing that we would do is we would set our mappings for our customers. And then below, we have the ability to map our sites from N Central to our sites in Halo. Again, same concept applies here. We are attempting to do a name match. If we do not find a name match, we will create a new site unless that site has already been mapped in here. And then right at the bottom here, we have the option to sync addresses or not. Again, the syntax and the convention of addresses in these different platforms may vary slightly, and you may not want different integrations updating addresses in other platforms when coming into Halo. So you have the option to not sync addresses and just sync our names and our IDs, or if you do want to sync addresses, then we just leave this checkbox unchecked. And again, everything that I've mentioned there is kind of summarized in some text up top here. Lovely stuff. Now, once you've set your mappings up, you're going to want to import your customers and sites. This is something that catches people out quite a lot, whereby people will set the mappings up, but not import the customers and sites, assuming that the mapping here is simply enough to establish that ID link. And that's something that Halo is working on at the minute. It already does that for some integrations, but not all of them. So I would always say, as a rule of thumb, before you move on to the next tab, import all of your records from the tab that you have just configured. Another handy point, if you're not familiar with the integration, you're not familiar with importing data into Halo from integrations, it is worth noting that when you click this, it won't actually start the import. What it will do is it will load up the import preview screen. So if you just want to verify what is about to come into Halo but not actually perform the import, you can click the button and just don't click start. We can also filter here, so we can, we don't have to import everything at this point. We can pick exactly what it is that we actually want to import. And then you click start and away it goes, creating those mappings, creating those customers and sites inside of Halo based on the mappings that we have established here. Nice. So the next tab is assets, and this is arguably the most important tab, and probably the tab with the most configuration behind it. It doesn't look like it right now, but I'm going to click edit here. And the first option we see is this determining an assets type. So in Halo, we classify all of our assets by a particular site, and we can group asset types under asset groups. And we're going to want to be able to determine what type of asset will be created in Halo based on some information that we're getting from N Central. So the first option, I rarely see people use this option, but the first option is all assets imported from this N Central server are going to have the same type. And if you have that selection, you are presented with an option below where you're picking the type of asset that every imported asset will be. Again, that is the least common option here. The The next most popular would be the user field to determine each asset's type. So now we can get a little bit more fancy, where we're saying, do we want to map asset types in Halo when they're created from N-Central based on the N-Central's device class or the N-Central device class label? So with this second option here, assets will be created based on the value for the device class or the device class label. Now, as I mentioned, we group our assets in Halo by grouping asset types, and that is actually mandatory in Halo. When you create an asset type, you must create an asset type underneath a particular asset group, and that's what this option on the right is highlighting. So what we're saying here on the left is, if there is an existing asset type in Halo called Windows, and a device is imported with a device class label of Windows, the asset type that's created in Halo will be of type Windows. However, if there is no asset type in Halo called Windows, well, what do we do then? Well, we're going to have to create a new asset type. But I just mentioned that asset types have to be created under a group. So what's the group going to be? Well, that is exactly what this option is on the right hand side. So this is saying that if we find a device class or a device class label coming in from N-Central that does not match by name to an asset type in Halo, we will create a new asset type, and it will be created under the group that we specify here. And then finally, we have probably the most widely used and also the most intricate option, and that is determine the assets type using rules. So I'm a big fan of this feature, and basically what we're saying here is, don't just look at the device class or the device class label. Actually look at any of the information that we are getting from N-Central and determine the assets type in Halo based on any data point. So the way that we set that up is by adding.
Can I just interrupt really quick?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Now, rules are a very specific thing in N-Central. So this isn't dictated off N-Central rules. These are based on rules within the Halo ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and the rules in question that we are referring to here are defined directly below in this table. So, for example, I'll add in here. Now, what we're saying when we're adding a record in here is we're saying the Halo asset type of cluster is going to be used when a device is imported from N-Central where any of these fields from N-Central have a particular value. It might be name, it might be MAC address, it could be any of these fields. So we have an awful lot of agency here over defining precisely what criteria has to be met in order for an asset to be created in Halo with a type of cluster. And we can see here as well, we can add multiple criteria, so you can get very specific. Generally, I only see one criteria option in here. It tends to be that there is a particular field in N-Central that's either got a certain syntax or has a certain value, and we're just looking for a certain value in that field, and that is how we're going to map there. So again, I tend to see something similar to this, where each device type in Halo is derived from just one rule, but you can have more if you want. And then finally below, we've got this default asset type. This is basically saying if everything else fails and we have absolutely no idea what the asset type is going to be, just set it to this. Cool. Now, tying directly back to this this rules piece, and specifically that Halo can determine the asset type once it lands in Halo based on information we're getting from N-Central. And the information we're getting from N-Central is going to be based on a field in N-Central. The important point to note here is the field that you're looking at must be mapped in here. So if a field is not mapped, the information in that field will not be imported into Halo. And you may find issues using rules to determine an asset's type if you're looking at fields that are not mapped fields. Hopefully that makes sense. The process of establishing field mappings is simply just by adding to this table. We can pick from any N-Central custom property or any, I say any, most of the N-Central native system fields, as we can see here, a fairly exhaustive list. And we can map this information to a corresponding Halo asset field. We can create a new field in Halo. And yeah, so we have complete control over the information that we're fetching from N-Central and complete control over where that information lands in Halo. And that is all controlled by virtue of these field mappings. Also worth noting that you can map custom and system N-Central fields to custom or system asset Halo fields. So again, the scope here is very broad. From my experience, it's somewhat rare that people map to Halo custom fields. Far more commonly will people be mapping to Halo asset fields. And then we've got this option below for each of our field mappings that's basically saying only populate the asset's field that I'm setting up here with information if that information is not already populated in Halo, right? The idea being you might actually have various different tools which are all feeding into Halo's CMDB. Some devices in Halo may overlap. There may be in N-Central, it may also be in Logic Monitor, for example. And you don't necessarily want different integrations that are importing assets to override the field data between one and the other. So we have the option here to say, only populate this field with data if it's not already populated. Cool. And then below, we've just got a couple of options here. This one's just a simple checkbox, but quite a powerful one, where we can match devices in Halo to end users based on the SAM account name in Halo and the last logged in user from N-Central. And then finally, we can pick whether or not we want to import pros. Lovely stuff. Same, the same point applies on this tab as with the customers tab, whereby we've got our import assets button. It's going to open up the import preview screen. We can pick what it is that we want to import, and away we go. So I'll just import a couple of assets for now. Lovely stuff. So that's all great. So you've set the integration up, you've tested the connection, that's all good. You've mapped your customers, you've mapped your asset types and your asset fields, you've imported everything. Great. How do I make sure that the information in Halo is constantly updated based on updates made in N-Central? Well, for that, we go on to the next tab, the syncing tab. For those of you that don't know, the Halo integrator is just a small application that Halo hosts if you're hosted, or you run if you're on premise, that automates the import from integrated platforms based on a schedule. So if you're hosted, you just come in here and you just check this box. You can then pick the entities that you want to import on a scheduled basis. Tends to be that the import runs on a daily sync. But we can amend that schedule to suit your needs. Now, the importing of customer sites and assets is something that happens on a daily basis, but something that absolutely needs to be far quicker than a daily sync is the syncing of alerts, right? We want alerts raised in N Central to be created in Halo pretty much immediately. And for that, we go on to the next tab. That's our webhooks tab. Now, the webhooks themselves are actually set up in N Central, and I'm going to hand it over to Jason in just a moment. Before I do, all of the information that you need when you're going into N Central to set this up can all be found on this tab here, right? Our PSA solution, our delivery mechanism, our endpoint, our username, our password. We can generate a new one and we'll plug that into N Central. And then our username that we get back from N Central and the password, again, can be entered in here. And then these two options up top as well. So the first option is when an alert is raised in Halo from N Central, what type of, I say alert, more broadly speaking, when a ticket is raised in Halo from N Central, what type of ticket do we want to raise? And that is based on this option that we have here. Now, again, for those of you that don't know, the ticket type in Halo PSA is one of, if not the most important attribute that you can set. The ticket type will define what information is added onto the ticket, the team that it goes to, the workflow that is applied, and what you can do on that ticket to drive it towards resolution. So a very important attribute here. And then finally, we have our new alert user representing the end user of that alert when it is raised in Halo. Now, to actually go to the setup of the webhook, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand it over to you, Jason.
Before we hand it over to me, and I'm going to share my screen, but can you talk about, because you did not drop down into those several other options around incidents, alerts. The reason being is I've had philosophical back and forth with our partners around which is best. I personally, I feel like when something is system generated, that would be, to me, in my head anyways, an incident. You know, the system has created an incident. I now need to look into it. However, a user, for example, may create a request or an alert because they have a workstation or laptop. Can you kind of define what you think is maybe best practice around those several different options? Because they are pretty robust and they do have differences.
Yeah, so I disagree with you.
Perfect.
So I guess the bottom line here is it doesn't necessarily matter about the name of the ticket type, but it certainly matters. What certainly does matter is the configuration of the ticket type. So I would argue that incidents are also tickets that are logged by end users. So incidents and requests would be something that are logged by end users. And I would say that something that was system generated would be an alert. I guess the important distinction here is you have a certain ticket type for tickets that are raised in Halo when an end user emails in for support. That ticket type that you pick, in my opinion, should be different from the ticket type that is raised from an integrated platform. There are several reasons for that. You know, one of them being there are hundreds, if not thousands, of options against tickets in Halo. A lot of them to do with SLAs, emails, communications, and visibility. And you can configure all of those options on a per ticket type basis. Now, you certainly want tickets that end users are logging to be visible to that user via the self-service portal, perhaps something we'll talk about in another session. But you may not want end users to be able to access information relating to alerts that are coming in from integrated platforms. Now that itself, you could argue that. Do you want to show that information? Do you want to show your end users how many problems are being resolved before they even know about them? I think that's quite a cool idea. But yeah, I would say Incidents and requests are reserved for ticket types that are raised by end users, and alerts are ticket types that are raised by integrated platforms. And alerts, you may not want to have SLA hold reminders, automated emails, that kind of stuff. So
What
that's
I
my 2 cents on the matter.
Yeah, and what I can tell you is based on the chat or the questions pane that is going off, a lot of people have said Morgan 1, Jason 0. So I think a lot of people would also agree with you. Now, in my defense, I took ITIL V2 probably 15 plus years ago, so maybe I'm a little rusty. In my head, I did think it was incidents, but now that you've talked through it, it actually makes a lot of sense. So this is why we're doing these webinars. It's to not only guide old Jason, but also the rest of the partner base into what is that best practice. All right, so I have a bunch of slides that go after this demo slide. I'm actually going to skip that only because we are getting a little short on time. And I want to pass this back over to Morgan to kind of quickly talk through the rest of the integration. But when you come into N-Central and you go into administration, PSA integration, and then configure PSA integration, now when it comes to the Halo integration, we do have a Halo PSA integration. My server is a little different than most, but the one we're talking about today is our custom PSA integration. So again, everything is evolving and changing. We're going to give you lots of flexibility around integrations, but the one that has been built out for, I don't know, Morgan, it must be at least 2+ years at this point, is the one that hooks into a custom PSA. Now, what Morgan did in that webhooks tab was identified a bunch of information that now needs to come over to N-Central. Okay, there is an API credentials for communicating with Enable N-Central. What you're going to do is create that custom PSA. Mine /50. Yours will be probably different. And password. We're going to choose generate tickets through an API. When it comes to Halo, what you're going to do is you're going to provide your Halo FQDN dot halopsa.com/API, and then in the ticket response, it is going to be /notify/N-Central. And again, in that webhooks pane, you're going to take that username and password and use that and paste that in. Now, when it comes to cleaning up tickets, I'll leave that to you. My integration is pretty a solid state or a steady state at this point, so I've reduced mine to 8. But if you're troubleshooting, you may want to lower this or even raise this even higher. And I'll talk about the reasons why as we get into debug logging. And again, any ticketing errors go to your special email or whatever account where you actually kind of maybe want to do some troubleshooting or get with Halo or Enable on why those ticketing errors could be happening. When you come over to debug logging, this is where you can actually start looking at the APIs that are being sent to Halo. So when you generate, and when I set up an integration, what I typically do is I go to a device. What I'll do is start flipping. I'll just choose my home device here. I'll start flipping things into a failed state. I will reverse a threshold. I will generate an alert, and then I will come in here and start looking at what those alerts are. Now, I haven't generated any today, but you can also turn on tail logs as well, which is kind of the immediate catch bin or place where we will send the last log. So you can turn that part on as well, which is really handy for understanding what the API is actually sending, especially when you get down to ticketing, because you can start doing what is called custom tags, right? These are fields that you can now insert into the JSON payload of the API communication, and then start mapping those fields from the Halo side. Okay, and there is obviously documentation from Halo in terms of how to use this, because it has to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, it has to be in a very specific format in order for Halo to kind of catch it and do things with those tags. For example, priority or category, I think it is specifically. Is that still the case?
Yeah. Do you need to create custom tags for that? I'm not sure if you do.
I believe so, because as far as I know, there's no other way to create the categories
Oh,
or
yeah.
even subcategories or what have you. I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but I believe according to the documentation, it has to be like in a particular format. And again, maybe that's been
Yeah.
updated. And your integration is ever changing, and sometimes I'm in a point in time of your integration, so I could
Yeah.
be very well wrong.
Yeah. Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
So, and again, when it comes to ticketing, this is where you can start setting up the notification settings. Do you want to reopen tickets? In most cases, you do. Often you're going to massage what that time period would look like. You definitely want to include ID source and description. I don't even know why we even put that in because nobody unchecks it. And then you're going to start mapping. So if this was like a priority one, disk, and then server, something like that. I'll just wing it up the top of my head. But if I was to come in here and go down to server disk, this is where I would start doing those mappings. Now, I have several people who will do a lot of priority ones as a catch-all, right? I don't personally like that method because I find it there's not enough information, because when you start sending over the ticketing information, you want a lot of that header information in here to kind of quickly identify what the problem is. So you start lumping in a few different of these into a priority one. It just doesn't work for me. I like to get very prescriptive in my my ticketing data. And I will actually show you one last thing at the very end of this, where you can actually use some very cool things within our notification templates, and I'll kind of allude to that in just a little bit. One thing you will also look to is the timeout or callback. Again, if you're doing API troubleshooting, I will probably set this to something very low, because you're just setting up the integration. You're looking at the API information in JSON. You really kind of want to see what's going on. You want those ticketing callbacks to be a little faster or what have you for troubleshooting. Otherwise, 15, 20 minutes is usually a good steady state for any of this. And what I'm going to do is pass it back to Morgan, who can kind of walk through kind of the remaining pieces within the Halo side.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Share my screen again. We'll just talk about the last couple of tabs. So back over here. So we've set all of our webhooks up. Lovely stuff. Touching on that debug mode, it's worth noting that Halo kind of also has the same thing in the form of our inbound and outbound request tabs. So any of those webhooks that are coming into Halo will be stored in our inbound requests tab here. And we store this information for a month, I believe. And we can click into any of these records. We can see precisely the payload that was sent our way, including those custom tags. There they are. And the response that we get back out. In this case, it's a 200 response. Ticket has been created. Here's our ticket ID. If in the eventuality something was wrong here and we failed to create the ticket, we get our failure response, and it will tell us what the failure is or what the error is. So yeah, a very handy couple of tabs as well, specifically for troubleshooting. If something is happening that you're not entirely sure why it's happening, first place to go will be the inbound or outbound request tabs. And then finally, we have our miscellaneous settings here. Firstly, we can just specify a port for our N-Central server for our remote control links. Below that, we have our option to require agents to have their username entered in Halo before they can initiate a remote session. And what that means, and perhaps we'll probably jump into this in a bit more detail in the next session, but just very quickly, what we're looking at here is a device that's been imported from N-Central. And these are the options that we have up top. Notice the lack of a remote control option. That's because I have not set my N-Central username against my agent account. via the integrations tab. So I will set that, save that, refresh. And now I've entered that username, I have those buttons available for me. Jumping back. Finally, in our miscellaneous settings, we just have some options regarding what the Halo integrator can do in Halo, namely when there is a lack of information coming in from N-Central. So if we no longer find a client in N-Central when our Halo integrator runs, do we want to mark that client as inactive in Halo? Not delete them in Halo, but mark them as inactive. So that's an option for you. The same can be said for assets. So again, you're managing your devices from N-Central. Halo is kind of just the container for that information. If you remove a device from N-Central, you don't want to have to remember to go back into Halo and deactivate it there. You know, you want to make sure if you're tying this to billing that your counts are always up to date. And so enabling this option will help you on that journey. And then finally, we've got our option to directly create sites in Halo if from an N-Central client, which again is not something that we're doing from manual import, but something we're doing from the integrator. Now, we've got 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure that there's at least a little bit of time to answer some of those questions. There's quite a few questions that have come in. So yeah, Jason, how do you want to approach that one? Do you want to read some questions out? Should we just go through one by one, or what do you think?
Yeah, I'll start at the bottom and kind of work my way up and kind of skim read because there were a lot of comments. I won't pick on Sebastian this time because he hasn't really said much other than when you first joined, he mentioned that we were double trouble. I did end up putting the user guide into the chat, so we've answered that one. This one says, this is likely an information for the development team. Maybe you did know, but the good thing about PSA integration from the PSAs instead of the N-Central doing the integration is the API. N-Central API does not have the ability to do the PSA mappings or so. Sure what mapping that is. Maybe that's customer mappings. I'm not entirely sure. The N-Central API is overall small, but in this specific scenario, it's not possible to create a customer from the API. It actually is. It's in SOAP. It's not in REST yet. You will ever need to manually do stuff, but the Halo API is much more complex. So if you want to create a customer, you can do the customer mapping in the Halo PSA. Hope this helps. And again, you're absolutely correct. We definitely need to port more of those SOAP-based APIs over to REST, and especially around some of those put and post actions that you actually want to command N-Central to do. So I would agree with you there. Is there a list of definitions for all of the N-Central fields? That's from Andre. Andre, maybe you need to clarify what definitions of fields you may need. I might be able to help you with that one. Is there a direct integration with IT Glue? I know we both, I believe, and I don't mean to speak for Morgan, but I believe we both have an integration with IT Glue. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct.
So you can integrate, and it depends on where your source of truth is really coming from. I'm the RMM guy, so I will tell you, in most cases, it is the N-Central platform that contains all of the ads information. That is kind of like the source of truth for all things assets. Then we take that data and maneuver it over to, or those configurations or assets, we maneuver that over to Halo and over to IT Glue. So it really depends on where your source of truth is coming to. But just know you can go IT Glue to N-Central, IT Glue to Halo PSA. Denver, clients that have sites, but tech put agent in no site. I don't understand that question. Do you? Clients have sites, but tech put agent in no site.
Does that relate to the fact that you can allocate devices in N-Central directly to customers?
He's saying, how do you sync?
So I think that goes back to that checkbox that I mentioned for the integrator, where we're creating sites in Halo directly from N Central customers. In Halo, assets must exist against a site. So must users. Sites are very important in Halo. If you don't have a site against a customer, the customer record is somewhat meaningless, um, especially when we're talking about this integration here. So if you want to, if you have assets in N Central that map directly to customers, I believe that checkbox is saying create a site in Halo for the customer, and that means that we can then put the assets somewhere in Halo. So hopefully that answers that question.
I hope so as well. I work very closely with Denver sometimes, so he has my email, and I definitely have yours.
Cool.
So the one question I wanted to look at, where is it here? It was from Robbie. Actually, there's one I want to get to first, and that is, where'd it go here?
From Robbie.
Uh,
What? Go on.
the one I wanted to answer is like, I know Enable's introducing a new integration with Halo. Should we kind of do that, or should we use this? Like, why are you doing both? And the reason is we're just going to give you choices. Ultimately, some people want to manage an integration from the N Central side, because historically, that's what you've always done. ConnectWise, AutoTask, etc., was always kind of done from the N Central side, and that's what you've always been used to. Halo came around and was like, well, and Enable's not doing it, so we will. So they built a really, really deep, robust integration. And what we've had to do is, it's funny because we were trying to build an integration with Halo from the N Central side about a year ago. And we have now had to play catch up time and time again. So just know, whether it is from Halo or from the Enable side, from the N Central side, just know that you have options. Okay. Uh, Benefits versus drawbacks. I haven't seen the integration yet. So you can get with me once 24.4 is released. I think it is end of October-ish, 21st, 23rd, something like that. That's when we're going to go GA with it. I don't know what the drawbacks could be, so I can't even speak to that. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom here because I wanted to see what Robbie said here. I see that the Halo customer site isn't sorted alphabetically. This is annoying. Well, thank you for your honesty, Robbie. Certainly, if you have around 614 sites.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is annoying, and we're doing something about it. I don't have an exact version or timeline. It may have already been implemented, but yeah, we're making sure that the sorting is actually alphabetical there. So yeah.
So Daniel chimed in terms of the Halo and Enable integration. Which integration option is the right one? I'm going to tell you, I just don't know at this time. I tell you, as your head nerd, I will definitely give you the right answer once I know, because I'm not going to have you hop into our integration if it's not as full featured as a Halo integration. So until 24.4 comes out, I will do my own testing, and if you want, you can always reach out to me. It's letter J MURPHY at n-able.com. You can reach out to morgan.aspinall at imaginehalo.com. I'm here to answer your questions. I know we're just over the hour, and I want to appreciate everyone's time, and thank you so much for joining. Before you go, I do want to ask you one last question, and that is, what did you think of the webinar today? How valuable was the integration on a scale of 1 to 5? 5 being high, 1 being absolute trash. Okay, so where do we fit in? I say it every webinar, so they should be used to it by now.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's where I like to end up. So you just want to use that. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. If I can't answer something, I'll get with Morgan. I appreciate everyone's feedback. This is really, really great. Okay. And Robbie asked for a 6 option. Oh, he's always been a sweetheart. And that's a wrap.
Does that mean 6 or does that mean 0?
I think he means 6, as in I wish there was a 6. It was amazing. So that's how I took it, anyways. I appreciate everyone's involvement today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. I really appreciate it. Morgan as well. Obviously, thank you very much. And I will see you. By the way, if part 2 is happening in October, if you have a calendar invite for October, I think it was 23rd, if I remember correctly. It's actually going to move to the 27th. So it's a week before that. So stay tuned for that. We're going to update those calendar invites very shortly. And appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks, Morgan.
Thanks, everyone. See you on the next one.
Okay. Bye-bye.